I've always said it. Our U.S. Supreme Court is worse than a bad joke. They're a bunch of politicians in robes. They're a bunch of political hacks. You can gauge with almost exact certainty how justices on the Supreme Court are going to rule in any given case based upon which president appointed them to that court. Do we have a rule of law or don't we? Does the law apply in a non-discriminatory, neutral fashion? Absolutely not. And I've always had a problem with the Supreme Court because it is extremely elitist. It only takes cases which it considers to be, quote, important. The way it considers cases to be important is whether they affect the benefactors who put them on the bench, generally speaking. But there's been a discussion lately, particularly by the Democrats, and they're right in this instance, and the Republicans are also somebody who needs to be taken into account. The Republicans have been critical too, that members of the Supreme Court are taking large gifts from people who have cases in front of them or whose interests are affected by cases in front of them. This is not new. Justice Ginsburg, who was deified, this leftist that was up there, sat on cases where her husband owned stock in companies that were in front of the Supreme Court. Justice Sotomayor, having been the Solicitor General that proposed Obamacare, ruled on Obamacare at the Supreme Court. These are just a few examples. And John Roberts is perhaps the most corrupt of all. His wife is a headhunter and places people in law firms for a lot of money who practice in front of the Supreme Court. She's making money off of the people who she's putting forward to law firms and other interests who then come in front of the Supreme Court. This is the problem. It's what Thomas Jefferson talked about. It's what I wrote about in my book. It takes a counter-revolution. Wake up, America. Federal judges and Supreme Court justices, unelected, unaccountable to the people, and giving themselves immunity, which does not exist in the Constitution, or for that matter, even by statutory law of Congress. They take it from ancient England, where the king gave his judges immunity so they could rubber stamp his illegal edicts. They are truly above the law. Justice Roberts, years ago, when there was also a controversy involving Justice Thomas, as there is today with regard to Judge Alito taking gifts, said, we don't have a code of conduct. We don't have to have a code of conduct. It would be unconstitutional for Congress to pass it or even for us to enact it. We are beyond reproach because we went through confirmation hearings in front of the Senate. Well, we know the Senate, how above reproach they are. This is unbelievable. And this is why the American people have lost confidence totally, top to bottom, in our justice system. Because sitting on top of all of the courts, the federal courts, is a compromised and corrupted Supreme Court. This is a revolutionary warning, a revolutionary mode. And we saw it with President Trump. He couldn't even get a hearing in front of the Supreme Court on a well-brought case by the Attorney General of Texas, notwithstanding his problems today. People rose up. They saw there was no legal recourse. They saw that the entire legal system was compromised and corrupt. And that is why the American people need to take back their own legal system. We need to try these corrupt criminals ourselves to get them sentenced and to get them put away where the sun don't shine. And of course, high on that list is Joe Biden, his son Hunter, and his brother James for a massive bribery scheme enriching the Biden family through 11 LLC corporations into their own accounts secretly. And of course, we've seen it recently with the so-called sweetheart deal. It was not even a sweetheart deal. It wasn't no deal at all. Hunter Biden gets off scot-free with a couple misdemeanors, no jail time, no nothing, completely contrary to the way ordinary citizens would be sentenced for lying to the government on tax forms, and also with regard to filling out false gun registrations. And of course, the Democrats, guns are evil to them. They don't recognize the Second Amendment. But when Hunter Biden gets a gun by lying to the government about his drug addiction and everything else, that's okay, no problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots, this is where we are. We have no choice but to wage a peaceful and legal revolution. Now is not the time just to expose things and to get documents and to go on Fox News. Gee, it's terrible. I've watched this now for over 30 years. I don't want to be entertained anymore. I want results, and you should not be entertained anymore. It is time to rise up. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, join our Justice League, contribute heavily to our cause with tax-deductible contributions. We need to get bigger. And in addition to using the courts to the best we can, starting our own legal system, which is responsible to the people, just like our founding fathers did when they took back our criminal justice system from the Court of St. James from King George III in 1776. That was a primary cause of the revolution. It is time for the American people now to mete out justice peacefully and legally like we did in the Old West. And we can do it. We are allowed to do it. Justice Scalia wrote in 1992, United States versus Williams, for the majority in the Supreme Court, the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the three branches of government. Forget about the Supreme Court. They're a bunch of political hacks, court jesters and clowns. They wouldn't even reveal who leaked the Dobbs decision, the anti-abortion decision. They covered it up. It obviously was one of them. I think it was Justice Roberts. That's my guess, because he didn't want that to go through. It's been totally covered up. Supreme Court has no credibility, top to bottom. It is a worthless, corrupted institution. And now is the time for the American people to restore our legal system, to form a new government, not a new nation, and to bring out justice ourselves. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, get my book. It Takes a Counter-Revolution, Wake Up America. I have a plan. It is a plan. It's not just protest and demonstrations. It's not just writing about American Marxism. We already know about that. It's what we do about it, affirmatively, not just talk, but time to act. Thank you for listening to me. Remember, the Father and Son will only protect us if we protect ourselves. In other words, he'll only help us if we help ourselves. I'll be back tomorrow with another special podcast. Until then, thank you for listening to me.